Welcome to the Sober Strength Podcast, a show that helps you optimize your relationship with alcohol and elevate your fitness. I'm your host, Jesse Carrajat, a United States Marine veteran, fitness and health coach, and mental health advocate. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. So welcome to part one of a 5-part series called the 30-Day Alcohol-Free Blueprint. Now, if you missed the first introduction episode, which was a very quick episode, just kind of kicking off this series, this course is designed to equip anyone with the knowledge, tools, and inspiration to conquer 30 days alcohol-free. Now, that could be something popular like a dry January, dry July, sober October, or just anyone doing a DIY 30-day alcohol-free month whenever they want. And each episode will feature scientific explanations of what's happening in your body as you distance yourself from alcohol over those 30 days, some science-backed tips and tools to bulletproof your habits and your environment from alcohol so you don't have setbacks, and plenty of insights and inspiration just to keep you motivated and dialed in as you move towards 30 days dry. So today in part one, we'll be covering week one, or days 1 through 7 in an alcohol-free journey. And before we get started, I just want to encourage and even strongly recommend anyone listening to dive into our free companion community, which is called the Ultimate Fitness Community. You'll find a link to it in the show notes. In our community, you'll find forums, meetups, fitness resources, alcohol-free resources, and really just a community of like-minded people to come alongside you and just inspire you and motivate you in this journey. So again, you'll find links to access that free community in the show notes, so definitely check it out. But either way, we're so glad to have you. And without further ado, let's get started and let's go deep. All right, everybody, welcome to part one of the 30-day alcohol-free blueprint, days 1 through 7. So again, if you missed last week, just a quick recap. We kicked off the series just kind of setting up the stage for this 5-part series or course, but also we did give 4 initial steps that everyone should take when they embark on a dry journey. And those quick steps, just as a recap before we move forward, and go deeper on this topic. Step 1, remove all alcohol from your home. Step 2, tell anyone about your goal. Accountability is key. 3, plan alternate activities around your typical drinking times. And 4, define your why and revisit it regularly. Why are you doing this? Because that is a powerful motivator. If you want more details as to why those 4 steps are pivotal, you can go back and listen to that quick 10-minute episode. But now we're going to go deeper into week 1, or part 1. And every episode in this series is going to be broken up into 3 parts. The first is called Some Science. We always want to bring science into the conversation and talk about and teach what's happening inside your body and mind as you continue to abstain and distance yourself from alcohol, even if for, quote, just 30 days. And the second section is called bulletproofing. Bulletproofing your habits, bulletproofing your environment, adding healthy habits and fortifying your environment to strengthen the chances that you will be successful in this alcohol-free journey. And then the third section is just going to be called the bonus section. We're going to expand on a particular idea or topic, whether that's just giving more knowledge or tips or pointing you towards resources to help you both in the short term and in the long term. So be on the lookout for those 3 sections. Each episode will probably last about 20 minutes. We want to give you all of the information so you can get on your way and use it and hopefully be successful in your goals. So let's get started for part 1, and we'll start with some science. And I want to educate you on, in this first part anyway, what alcohol actually is. And we won't do that in future episodes, but I think it's important just to get a understanding of molecularly, what is it? Why can it become such a strong, in a bad way, habit? And why do so many people find themselves wanting to, or maybe even sometimes needing to, take a break from alcohol? So we'll start there, and then we'll move into what is happening in the first week as you move away from alcohol. And there have been some incredible pieces of content already published that, frankly and honestly, in a million years, I could never do a better job explaining what alcohol is. And I want to start by pointing you towards those resources and linking to them in the show notes. Absolute must read. The first resource is an episode that Dr. Andrew Huberman, host of the Huberman Lab podcast, put out about alcohol. He talks about what it is molecularly, what's happening in your brain, how does it affect us as far as neuroscience goes. He even gives recommendations for what healthy consumption could look like. So that to say, check out the show notes. It is a must watch in your first week to understand alcohol. The second resource I want to point my listeners toward is a blog post from a company/app called Reframe. Reframe is a habit coaching alcohol reduction app that I personally have used several times in my life. Great product, great app. I want to point you towards them. They have a great drink tracker, a community kind of like ours that's built in to support, but they also have this blog post that does a great job of outlining what they call the alcohol withdrawal timeline. So I'm going to be borrowing from some of their information, but I definitely think it's worth a read so you can look forward and not wait for our episodes to come out. So I'm going to link to that. And then lastly, alcohol use disorder is something that we talk about a lot on this podcast. We've done a great episode on it. You can go back and find that episode where we had a licensed professional counselor who talked about that, but we're going to link to an AUD quiz. Alcohol use disorder is a spectrum, and there are some great quizzes out there that are free that you can take in the privacy of your own home and just get a kind of a sense of where you fall on the AUD scale of mild, moderate to severe. So those are three links that I'm going to point to let the professionals really educate my audience on those topics. But I do want to start with a definition of what alcohol is. So alcohol, or ethanol, is a psychoactive substance that is essentially the active ingredient in common drinks that we all know, like beer, wine, spirits, and whatnot. And really, it primarily affects the central nervous system by depressing it, which alters our mood and our behavior and neuropsychological functioning. So the buzz or the drunk or the stress relief, all those things, that's happening because our central nervous system is being depressed by this psychoactive substance known as alcohol. And the key here is regular consumption of alcohol leads to physical dependence and tolerance, which requires more and more of the substance to achieve the familiar effects. And that is how alcohol, quote unquote, gets a hold of us. We become physically and emotionally dependent on it while tolerance increases and we need more of it. And that's when we find ourselves in kind of a rough place or a hard place stepping away from it. Now, during the first week, and that's what we're here to talk about in part one of this series, when you go alcohol free, your body undergoes significant changes alongside that decision to abstain from alcohol by detoxifying itself, our body and our mind. And there's some feelings and emotions and some things physically and emotionally that happen when we step away, the severity of which is totally dictated by the severity of our dependence on the substance. So let's talk about what happens in days 1 through 7 of an alcohol-free journey. So the first, we'll call it stage of alcohol withdrawal, typically begins within 6 to 12 hours after your last drink. And during that time, many will experience mild to moderate symptoms of things like irritability, anxiety. Some people, depending on their level of dependence, might even feel nausea, vomiting, insomnia, sleep disturbances, and whatnot. But the bottom line is you will feel some type of physical and emotional response as you move away from alcohol for the first time. And it's so important to go easy on yourself during those initial stages. And what do I mean by that? Don't overexert yourself physically. Don't skip out on sleep or overlook the importance of sleep. Don't plan on having high stress, high intense type events, whether that's through your occupation and whatnot, but you should create an environment around you that is going to be conducive with having those ups and downs emotionally as your brain and your body adjust to not having that substance that it may be dependent on. So that's kind of a tip there. Is just be mindful. Journaling always helps, kind of putting thoughts to paper, especially if there's some anxiety and whatnot. But in the first couple days, you should feel two things. Again, a response to not having alcohol, but also probably a magnetic pull towards it to relieve yourself from the desire to have the substance. So that's in the first couple days. And then as you move towards, we'll call the second stage within that first week, which is typically days 3 to 7, withdrawal symptoms, if you will, might come a little bit more severe, as will your desire to, as they say, pick up or to use to alleviate those symptoms. Now, again, depending on your, how severe your dependence might be, some folks could even, have some pretty severe symptoms, things like delirium tremens. And if you have any type of feeling like that, or if you feel as though you're having significant issues, we, of course, encourage you to reach out to a medical practitioner immediately. It is unlikely. Typically, something like delirium tremens only occurs in about 5% of cases where people are stepping away from alcohol. But in that first week, primarily look out for, again, anxiety, irritability, sleep issues, triggers, and cravings, because so much is happening neurologically in your brain as it recalibrates and adjusts, and frankly gets used to and comfortable not having a substance that it may be relying on, whether that's for stress relief, social functioning, and whatnot. So withdrawal symptoms typically will be the strongest in that first week. Hey everybody, sorry to interrupt this episode. It's your host, Jesse Carrajat, and I've got a quick favor to ask. If you're enjoying this episode, would you please consider subscribing to the show and leaving a rating and review? That simple act goes such a long way to help us grow the show, reach more people, and make a positive impact in their lives. So thank you for considering, and now back to the show. Now let's talk about bulletproofing. So again, what are some things that you can be doing in addition to the first 4 tips that we provided in week 1? Let's start with adopting a drink tracker. A drink tracker can look like many things, but it's exactly what it sounds like. It is a place that you go to on a daily basis to jot down and keep track of how many drinks you did or did not have on a given day throughout these first 30 days. And it could look like old school, right? It could be a calendar hanging on the back of a door in a pantry where you give yourself a plus or a minus. It could be something more high tech. I mentioned Reframe earlier. There are plenty of apps out there. Just go to your app store on whatever smartphone you have and type in alcohol drink tracker, and you'll find many. And a lot of them have great resources and communities attached to them. But a drink tracker can be incredibly powerful in terms of a private accountability tool for you. And really, it just allows you to celebrate on a daily basis each and every day you go through these 30 days to give yourself a little high five, a little psychological reward that you were successful. And, those rewards build and compound and will motivate you. And I found in my own journey that, man, it was just, I looked forward to in the morning, waking up early, grabbing my coffee, opening up, in this case, an app, and just checking off that box that I did not drink. It's just a great win and a great way to start your day. So consider adopting a drink tracker, however that looks for you. Second one, huge, exercising. If you're not currently exercising, I could not recommend this enough. If you are currently exercising, I could not recommend to lean into that, maybe optimize it, exercise more, add some complexity, but keep yourself challenged and keep working hard. Exercise is a powerful tool to improve your brain chemistry. Look, when you remove alcohol, there's so much happening deep within your brain and your body. One of the things that's happening is you're removing a flood of dopamine, an essential source of dopamine. Your body is depending on that. It is pivotal for you to introduce other activities and sources of dopamine to counteract what it feels like to lose alcohol as a source of dopamine. And exercise is absolutely a powerful and potent way to do that. It boosts production of endorphins, which are natural mood lifters, unlike alcohol, which I would say is an artificial or outside mood lifter. And exercise also goes a long way in reducing stress and anxiety, which are huge triggers for alcohol consumption, particularly moderate to low intensity, or should I say low intensity to moderate cardiovascular exercise for 30 minutes or longer seems to be the sweet spot to release those endorphins, where really you're going to get the maximal effect of using exercise to counteract alcohol. So even something, if you're just getting started, like a short daily walk, again, if you're already regularly exercising, look to add complexity and challenge just to reward yourself and keep yourself dialed in. But it is a powerful and potent tool to combat alcohol withdrawal. So that's drink trackers, exercise. And now this next one, in the last decade, this has become absolutely huge. Try to adopt a mindfulness practice. What do I mean by that? So mindfulness, some might say meditation, which is a form of mindfulness. Mindfulness is anything that draws you towards focus and draws you towards being present. And what does that do? Well, first, it helps to kind of capture, focus on, and release negative thoughts and emotions that you might be experiencing that could be subconsciously causing you to drink. Mindfulness is, and a lot of studies are starting to show this, and I encourage you to look it up. You might Google something like mindfulness impact on the brain or mindfulness impact on mental health. But there are a lot of studies that are showing correlations between people who practice mindfulness regularly with improved mental health. They're even saying that mindfulness can be just as potent, if not more, than some, SSRIs and other types of, medicines and mental health remedies that are out there. But mindfulness could be something, if you're just getting started, that can be challenging. So it could be something is incorporating a daily walk without your cell phone and just allowing your thoughts to come and go and examining them as they go. It could be something like box breathing, where you're inhaling, holding, exhaling, holding for equal counts. It could be 2 seconds, 3 seconds, but just kind of forcing yourself to focus on breathing and focus on just, emptying your mind and emptying your thoughts. It could be something like yoga. Yoga is fantastic. Obviously, physically, there's many benefits to yoga, but if you've ever practiced yoga, you know that you are focused intently on what your body's doing and your muscles and sometimes the pain, but just a great way to focus your brain. And even things like martial arts or any skill that takes an intense amount of practice and focus is really good for your mind, which in turn is good for your alcohol habits. So consider mindfulness. We'll put some links to different resources and apps that you could maybe experiment with to get started. And then last is consider adopting a non-alcoholic alternative. So those are things, by the way, huge growth in this retail category. Read an article last week from Newsweek that says non-alcoholic, which are also known as NA, non-alcoholic beverages is the third fastest growing retail segment in the world, and it's projected to stay and perhaps surpass into 2 or number 1 in that position. And for good reason, because many people are moving away from alcohol and replacing that bad habit with a good habit, which could be a non-alcoholic alternative. So there's lots of science that speaks to if you're going to move away from a bad habit, perhaps replace it with a good one. And NA beverages do a great job these days with technology in kind of mimicking and replacing the flavor that you might be accustomed to, whether that's a hoppy beer or even a dry wine or a sweet wine. And there's just so many options out there. And that's our bonus topic of the week, which is non-alcoholic alternatives. Because again, a lot of times, many of us, when we're moving away from alcohol, we sort of grieve the social aspect of drinking, almost falsely thinking that we cannot continue to have fun without the drink, the alcohol-infused drink that we're used to. And I personally could not recommend an NA product more. And just to give some ideas out there, personally for me, because fitness is a big focus in my life, I tend to move towards NA options that are healthy. You know, there's ones out there like Hop Water, which is a brand, HOPWTR. There's Hoplark, which has been a big supporter of this show. Products that have, zero carbs, zero sugar. There's even some products out there that have adaptogens and nootropics. Now, I'm not going to back or pretend to be able to back the efficacy of things like adaptogen nootropics in the recovery world, but I'll say that for me, there's something to be said about drinking something that has some ingredients that I know are designed to help me, whether it's manage stress or calm down. There's something, it could be placebo effect or an actual effect, but my triggering time each night, which is between 5 and 6 p.m. typically, when I crack open a healthy sparkling water that tastes like hops and I know it has something like theanine or ashwagandha in it, it just does wonders for me. And just knowing that, I'm drinking something that's going to help my mental state. So definitely encourage you to look into non-alcoholic alternatives just to help you, especially in this first week and even in your long-term alcohol moderation or even alcohol abstinent goals. Non-alcoholic beverages are huge. Now, there are, people out there that will advocate for introducing other substances. There's the whole, California sober movement where people will consume THC beverages, THC gummies, CBD products. I would just say, I would caution you. I certainly wouldn't discourage you from experimenting if you have heard subjectively from your friends and family or read that could work for you. But I would say, in a 30-day dry journey, I would definitely encourage you to try to stay away from other psychoactive substances. Just get through the 30 days, completely sober, if you will. And then in the future, if you want to experiment with those types of products, by all means, we actually have an episode on this podcast with Justin Mazars, a co-host, where we unpack that particular topic. So if you want to go back in the archives and listen to that and hear a little bit more about how I feel about that and how Justin feels about it, definitely encourage you to do so. But go ahead, definitely purchase yourself some NA products. Have fun with it. Explore. You can go to a local liquor store these days. Most liquor stores have an abundance of options. You can go online. There's a lot of great companies that are direct shipping for low cost to you, or me personally, I get 2 cases delivered to me every 2 months where I'll use those again around times when I would typically drink. But definitely want to encourage you to explore non-alcoholic beverages. So that is it for week 1. Just as a recap, science-wise, withdrawal could be kicking in. Just make sure you're being mindful, journaling, sharing any challenges that you're having, and start incorporating some of the tips and tools that we've been suggesting. Things like drink trackers, exercise, mindfulness, and non-alcoholic alternatives. We certainly hope that part 1 of the 30-day alcohol-free blueprint was helpful for you. Remember, each step that you take brings you closer to a healthier, happier life and better relationship with alcohol. So stay committed. Share this with anyone that you think could benefit from hearing it. And make sure to join us next week when we go to part 2, which is unpacking days 8 through 14. And we'll dive deeper on this journey. So until next time, stay strong and live deep. Thanks for joining the Sober Strength Podcast. All right, everybody, that's the show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sober Strength podcast and spending some time with us today. We've got a favor to ask. If you enjoyed the show, would you please consider subscribing to the show and even leaving a rating and review? That simple act drastically helps us reach more people in our mission to help them live better, longer, healthier lives. You can also follow us if you'd like on Instagram and YouTube for regular tips and motivation around mental health, addiction, and so much more. Know that your support fuels our brand and is greatly appreciated. So until next time, stay strong and live deep.